We are coming on the air tonight with a dramatic escalation in the Middle East. Iran launching multiple waves of attacks against Israel. Missiles launched on Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and other areas. What we know about these attacks and why the back and forth could go on for weeks. We have information coming in by the minute. Our team is all over it, from Tel Aviv to the White House. Plus, our other big story today, hundreds of planned anti-ICE rallies all over the country this weekend. We're going to take you live to L.A., where crowds are set to gather soon. And Karen Reed's fate now in the hands of a jury for the second time. Will her second trial end like the first? Well, we're hearing from people gathering outside the courthouse. Then an ex-NFL star wanted for attempted murder. The search now for former wide receiver Antonio Brown, what Miami police say he did. And one man let snakes bite him hundreds of times. For what? Science.
Well, the first year I started doing this, it was a total disaster.
Why all that venom in his blood could change the way doctors treat snake bites. That's later on. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin Vasugian in for Hallie tonight, and you are getting a live look of the aftermath inside Israel after Iran hit it with 3 waves of attacks. We know at least 20 people were injured, according to Israeli hospitals. Israel's air defense systems working to intercept the rockets, with some of the projectiles falling on densely populated areas. Also new to us tonight, the U.S. is helping the Israelis shoot down some of those missiles after President Trump and the Israeli prime minister spoke earlier today. The missile attacks are Iran's promised retaliation for Israel's relentless bombing campaign that started last night. Israeli warplanes have continued to drop bombs all across Iran today, hitting, they say, hundreds of targets, even in the last couple of hours. You can see here some of the explosions from earlier in targeted assassinations of senior military officials and nuclear scientists, as well as strikes on nuclear facilities. This video, provided by the Israelis, claims to show Mossad agents striking Iranian weapons systems. Take a look at the aftermath in the capital, showing a building in the usually bustling city just totally burnt out. The Iranian media reported nearly 80 people were killed and hundreds more hurt in Tehran so far. Elsewhere in the country, video captured the moment Israeli bombs hit Iran's most active nuclear enrichment site. But why now? Israel says Iran was, quote, approaching the point of no return in terms of building nuclear weapons, a long-time red line for the Israelis. The prime minister making it sound like this could just be the beginning of a drawn-out offensive.
This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat.
The strikes on Iran came after months of President Trump warning the Israelis not to do exactly what they did over fears it could actually derail talks over the nuclear program. The Iranians earlier canceled negotiations set for Sunday, but President Trump is still holding out hope, telling NBC News he thinks there's still a, quote, opportunity to strike a deal. And after all of this, you might be wondering, why should I care if I'm here in the United States, thousands of miles away? Well, if you own stock or you have a car that runs on gas, you should care. It could affect you with oil prices surging and the stock market closing way in the red just in the last hour. We're going to talk about that in a moment. We've got our teams across the world covering this. NBC's Yamiche Alcindor is posted up near the White House. We've got Keir Simmons with us from the Middle East, Courtney Cubie at the Pentagon. But we start with Matt Bradley, who's on the ground for us in Tel Aviv. Matt, let's just start with what took place over the last couple of hours or so. What have you been seeing and hearing with Iran's retaliation on Israel?
Yeah, Yasmin, what we heard was a warning on all of our phones, and it comes out with a really loud alert. Every Israeli phone gets one telling us to go immediately to the shelters. That's exactly what we did. We went down here, and even inside this barricaded room, we had a front row seat. Really, we could hear outgoing missiles intercepting. We could hear impacts. And then when we opened the door, even inside this building, we could smell dust from what was happening right over this skyline. These interceptions happening, and you saw them on your screen. It was quite a show. Now, we're hearing from the authorities here, 34 people were injured, one of them critically, one of them seriously. Most of them were light injuries, and a lot of Israelis, a lot of folks here tonight who are going to bed without injuries. A lot of these people who are still alive have all of these safe rooms of the kind that we were in to thank, and this radar system, the emergency broadcast system that broadcasts onto our phones and sent out this big siren nationwide.
Matt, Israel and Iran have exchanged fire like this twice before. This time, though, feels and seems very different. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I thought so, too. It sounded as though this was going to be a lot worse, or at least it should have been a lot worse. But what we heard from the IDF was that actually fewer than 100 missiles, ballistic missiles, had been fired by the Iranians here in Israel. That last time we saw that exchange of fire that you're referring to back in October, the Iranians fired more than about 250 projectiles, drones, and ballistic missiles. So it was, on some level, quite a lot bigger. And you saw back in October the same kind of look, the same fireworks that were going on. But remember, the Iranians said that they had fired hundreds of ballistic missiles. The IDF counted fewer than 100. The Iranians said that they had fired 3 different volleys of missiles at Israel. The IDF said there were only 2 volleys that came over. So it looks as though there's a big disparity in the numbers. The Iranians might have been winding up a little bit, but we don't know. We're going to have to wait until the light of day.
Disparity to be expected, as we know, with that region and the reporting coming out of that region from both countries. But as we talk about, obviously, the initial attack on Israel, that was much larger, much more damaging than we have ever seen coming out of Israel. Talk me through the support that you're hearing on the ground from Israelis on this military campaign from their leadership.
Well, it sounds as though they're saying that this is going to continue. We heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that this could be days. We're even hearing that it could be weeks. This is not over yet, and probably neither is that Iranian retaliation. They seem to have kept some of their weapons in reserve. They might have more, but it looks as though today was just a taste.
Matt, any sense that Israelis support this? Did we lose Matt?
I'm sorry, Yasmin, I'm not hearing your question. I didn't hear your question.
It seems like we've lost communication with Matt Bradley on the ground for us in Tel Aviv. We're going to talk to him again, though, at the top of the next hour. Matt Bradley, thank you for that. Want to go from Tel Aviv over to the White House. Yamiche Alcindor joining us now from outside the White House. Let's talk first about what happened really in the last 60 minutes or so, which is a conversation, or what we learned in the last 60 minutes or so is a conversation between President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What do we know about the conversation, Yamiche?
Well, it's a key question. Right now, we don't have many details from this call. We know that the 2 leaders did talk. We also know that U.S. officials and U.S. authorities were aiding Israel in shooting down these Iranian missiles. An official noted to us, a U.S. official noted to NBC News, that it wasn't just also about helping Israel defend itself, but also they pointed out that there are many Americans living in Israel. So this is about American citizens. And also there's U.S. military equipment in Israel that they want to also protect. The other thing we know is that, of course, President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have had a close relationship. They're very close allies. That being said, President Trump just yesterday in the Oval Office noted that he was fairly close to a deal with Iran when it came to nuclear negotiations. And he said that it might not help if Israel were to attack Iran. And then, of course, if Iran were to attack Israel back and retaliate. That being said, the president said he was still very frustrated with the pace of the negotiations with Iran. So he was saying that this could be a missed opportunity for Iran. So that's sort of where we know it's going on right now when it comes to the president's thinking about the situation and his relationship with Israel. Yasmin.
What do we know about what the president knew when? And I ask this because while the president has said they did not necessarily work in lockstep with Israel to launch this attack, we also know that they're helping shoot down some of the missiles that Iran has launched on Israel. And in addition to that, we saw some of the Truth Social posts from earlier this morning in which the president said, listen, I gave you 60 days, and I'm paraphrasing here, this is day 61, right? Which would say to me the president was more involved than he is letting on. But what are you hearing coming out of the White House?
So from our understanding, Israel gave its allies, including the United States, a heads up that it was going to be doing this. But the U.S. has been very clear to say that they were not involved. There were no U.S. military personnel or anything involved when it came to the actual strike that Israel took against Iran. Though in a conversation with NBC News today, President Trump was very quick to point out that it was U.S. military equipment, he said, that was being used against Iran, and he was proud of that. So that tells you that while the president didn't want to take credit for the actual strike, he did want to make clear that he is an ally of Israel and has supplied them with the weapons needed to defend themselves and to do strikes like the one we saw.
All right, Yamiche Alcindor for us. Thank you, Yamiche. Appreciate it. Want to go to our senior national security correspondent, Courtney Cuby, to talk more actually about that. So Court, pick up there, if you can, on where Yamiche left off, and this idea now that the U.S. is helping shoot down some of these missiles that are coming from Iran, and what that means for the United States' involvement in what is to come.
So I would say that this is pretty consistent with how the United States has been with Israel for years, at a minimum in the last several years. And that is the U.S. will come to the defense of Israel whenever it is needed. The U.S. has helped in these back and forth salvos between Israel and Iran over the past year or so. The U.S. has stepped in to help Israel defend their homeland a number of different times. So that I don't see as much of a departure. Now, the officials who we've been speaking with ever since this started last night, Yaz, they continue to say that the U.S. does not have any kind of a role in this military operation at this point. So that means they're not dropping bombs. They're not doing things at this point like electronic warfare, or jamming air defense systems, most of which, frankly, have been damaged or destroyed in Iran. But that kind of assistance, military assistance. But we are still told that they're not even helping with the logistical support. So things like aerial refueling. Now, that's one of the things that could change. It's a little bit quieter. It's a little behind the scenes. The U.S. could step up their support to Israel intelligence-wise. They already have a close intelligence sharing relationship, so that wouldn't be a huge departure either. But at this point, we still are not seeing any indications that the U.S. is going to be offensively involved in this, not just defensively.
So you brought it up, and I want to draw on that, which is intelligence sharing. We do know that Mossad and the CIA have a really close relationship when it comes to intelligence sharing. And I'm sure it's not necessarily something they're being forthcoming with when it comes to this operation, but this seems like a month-long operation on Israel's part to prepare to carry out what they did overnight. Anything we're learning about the sharing of intelligence in preparation for this attack?
Well, look at some of these. This is an effort here to, at a minimum, severely disable Iran's nuclear program. At a maximum, which it appears, according to Bibi Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu last night, it appears they are going towards, which is a complete destruction of their nuclear program. That is something that Israel has been planning for years. It is something that the United States has provided information about their nuclear program, their nuclear facilities for years. So in that respect, yes, the United States obviously has been sharing information with them. But as far as this current mission, this current operation, again, officials are telling us there has not been direct intelligence sharing about this specific mission.
What's the posture, Court, at U.S. bases in the region? If you remember, after the killing of General Qassem Soleimani, they attacked a U.S. base in Iraq. And we've heard from the Supreme Leader of Iran, who essentially says not only are they going after Israel, but they're going after the United States. They're holding the United States responsible, despite even hearing the reporting that the U.S. says they aren't involved.
Yeah, the U.S. bases in the region, personnel have been at a high state of readiness for some time now. The U.S. has moved in additional assets in recent months. I don't think they can go any higher than they are, but they are watching and very concerned about the possibility of proxy attacks.
Courtney Cuby, thank you. Appreciate it, my friend. Want to bring in Keir Simmons now to talk more about everything that's going on in the region. And Keir, obviously, you've been on top of this story since it launched. I think what I'm most interested right now is the regional response that we're hearing from Iran's and Israel's neighbors. And let's remember, they are, in fact, neighbors, not separated by much. Where do things stand, especially with the Gulf states?
Well, the Gulf states will be nervous. We did hear from the Saudi foreign minister condemning the attack. It's interesting because the Saudis and other Gulf states here where I am had a adversarial posture towards Iran in years past. That shifted to a diplomatic approach. And in a way, the U.S. has kind of gone in the other direction since President Trump in his first term left behind the Obama nuclear deal, for example. So they'll be watching with some concern, and part of the reason will be we saw Jordan, according to reports, help shoot down some of these Iranian munitions as they headed over its airspace, and that, of course, raises the prospect that Courtney was talking about, that the Iranians might target the Arab states. They have in the past, or they could target U.S. bases in the Arab states. In Iraq, for example. So there is a real danger of escalation. I'm very interested to know in the coming hours whether Iran is pulling its punches or whether this is what it's got. And Matt Bradley's been talking about that there in Tel Aviv. You're not seeing huge devastation. Is Iran, knowing that it's weak, being careful to not overstrike and then pull the US into this more? And frankly, is that naive? Because you've got Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel talking effectively, just pretty much openly about the potential for regime change, calling on the opposition, the opponents of the Iranian regime. And that suggests that Israel's strategy here is much more than just Iran's nuclear program.
Let me read for folks, Keir, because we're just getting this in while you've been on the air with me speaking, that we're getting some news in from our NBC producer on the ground in Tehran reporting that the city's air defenses, and I'm reading this directly from my email, guys, so bear with me, are being deployed, and that drones, missiles, and fighter jets can be heard across several parts of the city. Iranian state media reporting that the air defenses in the capital were activated early on Saturday local time to intercept fresh Israeli strikes. And just to be clear here, folks, as you're watching, right, we are 7.5 hours behind Iran in time. So a lot of Iranians right now asleep in their beds as they're hearing this going on outside their doors. One of the questions, Keir, that I have been asked repeatedly is who comes to Iran's defense in all of this if this becomes beyond a regional war? And of course, the two countries that come to mind to me and something that you are expertly aware of is China and Russia. Exactly that. Yeah. So talk us through that, if you will, for a moment, and what we're hearing coming out from them.
It's such a big question. Yeah, it's a good point. It's such a big question. How does China and Russia respond? Because there is this so-called axis of resistance: China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Remember, Iranian drones have been used by Russia over Ukraine. So how do they respond to this is just a fascinating aspect of it. I will say this too, we do have reports that the Israelis were intelligence-led to some extent last night with a gathering of Iranian commanders that they wanted to target. And I suspect that this is more intelligence-led attacks, because what happens, of course, is when you carry out an attack, you shift things, people move around, and you get more intelligence. Another aspect of this, why I'm certain that we're seeing more strikes by Israel tonight, is that it's been very clear for years that if you wanted to hit the Iranian nuclear program, you wouldn't just do it in one night.
The one thing that you spoke about earlier, Keir, I thought was interesting, in that is this all that Iran's got, or are they in fact holding back? And I wonder, though, if Iran is going to go back to kind of the way in which they operate, their MO, which is their proxies. And that is oftentimes the way in which they make they have the biggest damage, right? They get the biggest bang for their buck, per se, and they're able to reach across various areas that they wouldn't normally be able to reach across because they don't necessarily have maybe the capabilities that they have right now. What is the likelihood that they will do that?
Yeah, Yasmin, as you know very well, it's an interesting point. Those proxies in Syria, as they were in Lebanon, in Gaza, those proxies were there to help Iran threaten Israel without actually itself coming into confrontation with Israel. It's now in confrontation with Israel. It's talking about that this is a war with Israel. That's not where Iran wanted to be. And is it still thinking this isn't where we want to be?
Got it. Keir Simmons for us for now. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Want to bring in now senior business correspondent Christine Romans to talk about the markets, because, okay, by the way, and not surprising when this sort of thing happens, the market's not closing very well today. And then we're talking, okay, viewers, Americans at home going, okay, why does this affect me? This is happening across the world. Well, oil prices, which so far have been doing pretty well if we're comparing to 6 months ago. But then again, you think about Russia's invasion on Ukraine. What happened to oil prices then? They skyrocketed. Are we going to see the same thing?
Look, this is a tinderbox, and investors don't like geopolitical instability, and that's exactly what this is. So today was a textbook response to instability in that part of the world. I mean, you've got a third of the oil that is traded every day goes through the Strait of Hormuz, which is right there in that neighborhood. So it sounds sort of, I don't know, it sounds sort of shallow to be talking about money at a time when people are literally in their beds worried for their lives in these countries. But this is a very destabilizing moment here when you look at what's happening in that region. And you're right. Before today, you had gas prices in the U.S. down 32 cents a gallon compared with last year. So people were starting to feel a little bit better about, in the midst of this tariff war and inflation exhaustion after a couple of years, that lower gas prices were something that were kind of buoying American consumer sentiment and business sentiment, too. And now there's a big uncertainty. Today you saw oil prices, up $8. Wow. A barrel. That's a lot. $8 is a big, big move. And that means if this uncertainty persists, you could have oil prices rising higher. And what does oil make? Oil makes gasoline. Right. It also makes chemicals. It makes a lot of things that make economies around the world move. So while we're talking about the human suffering and uncertainty that's happening, that's how it's reflected in financial markets.
Christine Romans, thank you. Appreciate it. So we want to get to the other stories tonight. Dozens of cities across the country, they're now getting ready for an anti-ICE raid protest happening tomorrow. You're taking a live look at a press conference happening right now in Los Angeles with law enforcement officials detailing preps for so-called No Kings protests set to happen in all these cities that you see marked on this map. I mean, across the country, literally, organizers saying it's meant to counter a major military parade in Washington, marking the Army's 250th anniversary. On the other coast in New York, Mayor Eric Adams saying he told the government, quote, "We got this," ahead of Saturday's protests.
New York City is also the greatest democracy on the globe. And part of our great democracy is the ability to peacefully protest.
You've also got this big search tonight out in New Jersey for 4 people who escaped an immigration detention center in Newark. The Department of Homeland Security and FBI are offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to their arrest. David Noriega is joining us now from Los Angeles. Let's talk first about what we're learning about some of these Marines, 200 or so of them. They've reportedly moved to LA to protect federal property, David, and personnel. That's according to a military commander. Let's talk about the preparations underway now ahead of these demonstrations tomorrow that are planned.
Right. So on the one hand, you have the federal government forces, right, which are either the Marines or the federalized National Guard troops that you see behind me outside the federal building. And then on the other hand, you have local, state and county law enforcement. The troops and, federal police are theoretically going to be staying put in these federal properties, which have been the target of much of the protests over the last week or so. Local and state law enforcement is taking this extremely seriously because, politically, people like Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom are out to prove to the federal government that there should be no need, that there is no need for National Guard troops and Marines to be in the city at this time. What that has translated to over the last several days that I've been on the street observing these protests is just in very literal terms, disproportionate law enforcement response to the protest, by which I mean law enforcement officers, police, state and local police, outnumbering protesters sometimes by 2 or 3 to 1, and being very quick to use less lethal force, less lethal munitions, mounted officers, use force really to disperse protests, not allow them to be in one place for very long. The difference, obviously, the thing that's going to change dramatically from these weekday evenings into tomorrow is that we expect to see many more people, a much larger cross-section of LA society coming out to march, starting at City Hall a few blocks away from here, but depending on how big the crowd is, also potentially getting towards these federal properties where they might come into direct contact with the National Guard troops and Marines. Though I will say, Yasmin, we haven't actually seen any Marines on the street so far. Tomorrow might be the day that changes.
And of course, it's going to be interesting to see what happens across the country as we see so many protests popping up. David Noriega, for now, thank you. Appreciate it. Tonight, the only survivor of that tragic plane crash in India, speaking about the experience from his hospital bed.
For some time, I thought I was going to die. But when I opened my eyes, I realized I was alive and tried to unbuckle myself from the seat and escape from where I could. It was in front of my eyes that the air hostess and others died.
Seems like a miracle. You actually see the man here literally walking away from the crash. In that video, he's walking away. We're going to show you the video of the moment that plane fell out of the sky. We want to warn you, though, it's incredibly disturbing to watch. You see it here taking off en route to London. Seems to struggle to lift off the runway. And it barely goes up in the air, and then it slams on the ground, as you see there, into a residential area right next to the airport, exploding into that huge fireball. There you see it. We know tonight more than 240 of the passengers and the crew on the flight are presumed dead, and 24 people who were on the ground at the time of the crash still in the hospital and getting treated. I mean, it's incredible to hear the story of that lone survivor really feeling more like a television show or a movie than honestly reality, that you could survive a crash like that. But in fact, not only did he survive, he walked away, Tom.
Yeah, with just scratches and I think some light burns. Really amazing. His name is Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, and he was traveling with his brother. He doesn't know what happened to his brother. Everybody else on that plane, and presumably including, of course, his brother all died. And then on the ground, as you know, that plane plowed into a dormitory for college medical students, and there are about 30 people who are believed to have died there. We did hear from this man today. He was interviewed by Indian TV there in the hospital. Take a listen to what he says. You're going to hear the voice of translator.
I don't know about the other part of the plane, but where I landed was on the ground. I could see there was space outside the aircraft, so when my door broke, I tried to escape through a little space, and I did.
Let's show you where he was seated, because that's of great interest to people. He was, of course, in a 787 Dreamliner, and he was seated right there, seat 11A, which is right next to the emergency exit. He said the door for the emergency exit was damaged, and yet there was a small opening, and he crawled through and made his way to safety, and nobody else got out.
I know, Tom, that they have recovered the black box, which is going to be able to reveal to us a lot of information and to investigators as to what actually took place. But you got so many folks scratching their heads right now saying, listen, you see this thing struggle even to take off. And then immediately it seems like it's just gliding back towards the ground. And then that huge fireball that we see, right? That
piece of video,
go ahead.
Can I just show, can we re-rack the video? That piece of video is actually fascinating, because that is something that most U.S. airlines don't have. That is the DVR, video recordings from inside the plane. And that is a DVR that records the camera images from inside the plane. And those camera images pointed at the cockpit to see what the pilots are doing, but also at the galley. Again, looking at the video of the guy walking away with that silver box. That's important. Separately, they also have the traditional black box that we know. That's the flight data recorder, and now a combined flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. So with all of that data and this new video recorder I mentioned to you, they're going to have an awful lot of information. And the leading question right now is, were the flaps on the plane not extended enough in order to have a takeoff? That right now is a leading theory.
Yeah, lot of questions, certainly, as investigators go through all of that stuff. Tom Costello, as always, we're appreciative. Thank you, my friend.
You bet.
Welcome back. The fate of a Massachusetts woman accused of murdering her Boston police officer boyfriend, now in the hands of a jury for a second time. That is the defendant, Karen Reed, leaving court a little bit earlier. 12 jurors will now decide whether she did it or not. Did she not hit John O'Keefe with her SUV and leave him for dead on a frigid January night back in 2022? Prosecutors say she made her decision that night.
She got drunk. She hit him. She left him to die. It's that simple. She leaves him behind. She leaves her taillight behind. She goes home. 53 phone calls that night. 53 phone calls. Not one to 911.
The defense says there are holes in the government's case.
You're holding reasonable doubt, folks. You're holding a not guilty verdict. There was no collision. All you need to know is that the Commonwealth failed.
Outside court, about 100 people gathering to show their support for Reed, a lot of them carrying signs or wearing pink. Many of them, like the defense in this trial, believe Reed is being framed, which is why this case really exploded online and in the media the first time it went to trial. Reed's first trial ended with a hung jury. Emily Ikeda is following the story for us and joining us now. There was a lot of evidence, Emily, that prosecutors laid out. And one of the key differences between this trial and the last one is that they were able to use Reed's own words from interviews. Walk us through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yasmin. So Karen Reed never took the stand. She never testified throughout the nearly 8 weeks of testimony from dozens of different witnesses. But she has been very vocal outside of court, talking to reporters and the media almost every day throughout the last number of weeks. But also since the first trial that ended in a hung jury, she's conducted a number of interviews describing a number of things, including drinking the night of John O'Keefe's death. She also talked about some of the moments that his body was found. Take a listen here from some of the prosecution, what they were highlighting in their closing arguments today.
She knows exactly where he is. She knows where to find him. She knows where to expect to find him because she knows where she left him. She tells us.
It was a weird-shaped lump at that time in those elements. And I was looking to find him on the side of the road. I was expecting I'd find him.
So this is the slip, Yasmin, that the jurors, 7 women, 5 men, will fill out if they reach a verdict. It lists a number of charges, including murder in the second degree, manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor, and also leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death. Yasmin.
So I know this has really been a highly contentious trial, both this one and the last one as well.
Yeah.
And there are plans when this verdict comes out that local police, law enforcement, they're going to block off streets in anticipation of what may be to come.
Yeah, and you can see why when you take a look at, especially earlier in the day, court has since dismissed, but there's a sea of pink. You could feel emotions running high on the ground here. There are a number of supporters for Karen Reed. So many people, not just in the Boston region, the New England region, but across the country that has been following this. I asked Karen Reed how she was feeling after closing arguments, and she said that she was feeling good. She also added that she is feeling a little bit anxious and eager for this to end, but it felt like that the closing arguments couldn't have gone better. Yasmin.
Emily Keda for us. Thank you for being there. We appreciate you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, a South Carolina inmate is set to die by lethal injection tonight, the state's 6th execution in less than a year. Stephen Stanko is charged with murdering his friend and emptying his bank account and later killing his girlfriend and raping her teenage daughter. A judge denied his lawyer's request to stop the execution earlier this week. Number 2, police in the Dominican Republic arresting the nightclub owner whose roof collapsed and killed over 200 people in April. Him and his sister, who helped manage the club, are being investigated for involuntary homicide. The DR's attorney general says the two showed, quote, immense negligence by failing to stop the collapse. Number 3, Boston University responding to Call Her Daddy host Alex Cooper's claims that one of their women's soccer coach sexually harassed her for years. They're saying they have a zero-tolerance policy for sexual harassment. Remember, Cooper says she was ignored after reporting the harassment to BU's athletic director and alleges her coach's successor has harassed even more students. At number 4, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is now pleading not guilty to human smuggling charges at his arraignment. The legal resident returned to the U.S. last week after the White House sent him to a high-security prison in El Salvador. Representatives for the DOJ and Garcia have not responded to our request for comment. And number 5, a federal judge is now blocking President Trump's executive order for new voter ID requirements. He signed the order in March, which would make voters show proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections and require states to finish counting ballots by Election Day. The judge says Trump's order goes beyond his authority as president. Coming up, one of Diddy's famous friends trying to surprise him in court, who it was and why he was there, plus a burning semi-truck fallen off an interstate in Kentucky, how the driver got out just in the nick of time. All right, welcome back. A rare show of celebrity support for Sean Diddy Combs tonight from someone you probably recognize. Yep, that's Ye, the rapper formerly known as Kanye West, leaving court in New York in just the last couple of hours. Our team inside court telling us he never actually made it into the main courtroom where Combs' sex trafficking trial is happening. Ye is one of the few major celebs to offer public support for Combs. All this happening, as we heard from one of his ex-assistants on the stand today, testifying about how one of Combs' alleged victims seemed like a, quote, willing participant in so-called king nights or freak-offs. That woman, Jane, had been on the stand just yesterday testifying about how she felt she was pressured into marathon sex performances in front of her then-boyfriend, Combs. A reminder of why he's here. Prosecutors are charging him with sex trafficking and racketeering, charges he's pled not guilty to. His defense team says all the sexual encounters he had were consensual. Chloe Malas is joining us now from outside court. Kanye West, at court today, causing quite a commotion, Chloe.
It was a circus. I happened to not be here the moment that he got here because it was my son's kindergarten graduation. And, you know, it was a clear decision of where I needed to be. But I knew last night that Kanye was thinking about coming down here. And, you know, we had some reporters in the courtroom. But like you said, he didn't go in the courtroom. He went to something called an overflow room. That's for media and members of the public. So it's unclear as to why he didn't go into the courtroom. Now, that would have caused a spectacle with the jury, right? I mean, to have that type of celebrity, especially someone who's been so openly controversial over the last few years, to be in there. But I did talk to one of Diddy's longtime friends. His name is Luch, Hallie, and he's been in the courtroom every single day sitting next to Diddy's mom. And he spoke to me about Kanye coming to court today. Take a listen. Kanye West coming to court this morning. I wanted to see if you could kind of explain to everyone why did he decide to come today?
Well, he said he came to support, so that's why he came. You know what I'm saying? So he's a very busy guy, and he took his time out to come and show support and show Puff the love he showed him today. And the family, they appreciate him, and I appreciate him.
So, Yasmin, a lot of people were saying, is he here to testify? No, he's just here to show support, and it's unclear if he's going to come back next week. And we very well may see some other celebrities. I know you and I have talked about this, like who might show up, because it's going to be Diddy's chance very soon to put on his side of the case.
Do we know if Diddy knew that Kanye West was there?
We definitely are certain that Diddy knew that he was going to be coming because we saw Christian Combs, one of his kids, come down and greet him. But I don't know if in real time he knew. But there were rumblings as of yesterday that Kanye might be coming.
Got it. Let's talk about this juror, right? There has also been some drama surrounding this juror. Walk us through what's happening there.
All right, so there's 12 jurors, there's 6 alternates, and that's why you have alternates, right? I mean, you've covered so many cases, Yasmin, to replace in all sorts of different situations. Well, this is juror number 6, and it looks like it's a residency issue. He was living in the Bronx in New York, and he recently mentioned in passing to one of like the bailiffs or court guards that he had moved to New Jersey. Well, slip of the tongue, maybe it was, but that's not a good thing. So the judge is sounding like he's inclined. I mean, court's still going on behind me, and it sounds like the judge is inclined to dismiss him, strike him, remove him, which would be interesting because what do you do in the interviews and talk about like what's going on so far? So that part would be interesting. And they're going to make a decision on Monday. Combs' defense team adamant that they don't remove him. And perhaps it's because when I've been in the courtroom, you can tell that he's really paying attention when the defense is up there putting on their case and their cross-examination. He's taking a lot of notes, not so much when the prosecution is doing their side of the trial. But, you know, who knows? Sometimes, like I've talked to a ton of criminal defense attorneys, and as I'm sure you know, you might think a juror's mind is leaning one way, but in fact it's leaning another.
Right.
So you can't
ever
read
know.
anybody's mind as to which way they're leaning. But this is all going to play out, I'm sure, throughout the weekend with motions and on Monday.
By the way, Chloe, you made the right choice. I mean, there's nobody that should ever miss a kindergarten graduation. There is nothing better than a 6-year-old walking across a stage to receive their diploma.
He was in a little bumblebee costume, my little bumblebee. Absolutely.
I love that. Flame will last. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, NBC covers hundreds of stories every day. And because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment that we call The Local from our Southern Bureau. A miraculous moment in Kentucky. Look at this, a semi-truck on fire, fallen off a highway near a bridge. But the driver got away with only a couple of bumps and bruises. First responders say the driver jumped out of the dangling truck right before it fell over. Also from our Southern Bureau.
Hold on.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. This is how a former New York cop is responding to his first ever alligator call down in Florida. You can hear other officers cheering him on. The police department calls it his official welcome to Florida. No, thank you. And from the Midwest, take a look at this. A car flipped over after a crash in Ohio. The culprit? Cicadas. The bugs apparently attacked the driver, leading to the accident. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but police are telling people to keep those car windows up for the next several weeks. Unfortunately, though, the suspect, those pesky cicadas, they fled the scene. Get it? Tonight, police in Miami issue an arrest warrant for former NFL star Antonio Brown on an attempted murder charge. It all stems from a fight Brown was involved in last month during an amateur boxing event where he allegedly punched a man, took a gun from a security guard, and then 2 shots rang out, one of those bullets grazing the same man in the neck, according to the arrest warrant. I want to bring in NBC's Jesse Kirsch, who's following this story for us. What do we know about how this all started, and have we heard it all from Antonio Brown's team?
So we've been trying throughout the day to get in touch with Antonio Brown, Yasmin. We have not been able to do so yet, and frankly, we're not quite sure exactly where he is. At last check with police, he was not in custody. Earlier, police had also told us that there had not yet been, a conversation around him potentially surrendering to police. So nothing was being coordinated when we checked in earlier in the day with police. We're trying to get an update from them, but haven't gotten any new information on that. So that is the status quo we know things to be. And it's also not clear exactly where Brown is right now. According to a source who spoke with our colleagues at WTVJ, our Miami station, NBC6, Antonio Brown may not even be in the country, according to that source. Police believe he may not even be in the country, believe he is not in town, not in the Miami area. So his whereabouts are unknown at this point. As for how this all started, as you mentioned, this allegedly began with a verbal altercation that led to a fist fight, and then things devolved from there. And this happened weeks ago. At the time, Brown had made a comment on social media. We have that tweet that we can share with you, where he posted about being detained briefly by authorities, as he put it, and said that he was had his items being grabbed by people. People tried to take stuff from him, and made clear at the time that he was not arrested.
All right, Jesse Kirsch for us. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. Coming up, one mother's excruciating choice to stay as an international student in the United States or return to her home country and possibly never come back.
I am a mother, and they are my kids. They need me.
To tonight's Original Now with in-depth reporting on a topic that we've been watching. While Iran is locked in that fight with Israel we've been telling you about, the travel ban here in the U.S. is keeping some Iranians from seeing their loved ones. I spoke with an international student who is facing an impossible choice: to continue her education here or go back to her children in Iran. With President Trump's travel ban, tens of thousands of international students now in limbo and facing new challenges. Graduate student Nazanin Hashemian from Iran is one of those students.
The travel ban has completely turned our lives upside down.
She's currently pursuing a graduate degree in computer science at San Francisco Bay University. But her journey has been far from easy. She was first accepted to the University of Tampa on a full scholarship until it was all taken away.
I couldn't continue my education there because of my nationality.
In 2023, Governor DeSantis signed a bill banning universities from providing grants to foreign students from 7 different countries, including Iran. So she opted to study in California. But with Iranians now barred from entering the United States,
I have to choose between continue my education or leaving it behind to be with my children. It is a decision no mother should ever have to make.
For months, she's been trying to get her 2 14-year-old daughters to move from Iran to the U.S. She says they applied for a visa a number of times, but continued to get rejected.
I never know about this, that they cannot join me. If I know before this, I never come to U.S.
She says her daughters have been struggling emotionally and mentally without her. The State Department did not respond to our request for comment. Out of the 19 countries part of the travel ban, Iran has the most international students, according to Open Doors, a nonprofit sponsored by the U.S. State Department. Nazanin says she hasn't seen her children or husband in 2 years. And now with the new travel ban, she has lost complete hope of them ever coming.
I am studying. Always I am thinking about my kids, about my husband.
Even her professor is asking for her daughters to get visas, sending a letter to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, saying, quote, Ms. Hashemian is a devoted mother who is striving to build a better future for her family. Nazanin was planning to get her Ph.D. at the University of Tulsa next year, and the school is already warning students from countries that are part of the travel ban not to leave the country. Technically, with her current student visa, Nazanin should be able to re-enter the country even during the ban. But she worries she won't be able to come back. For now, Nazanin doesn't know if she'll plan on staying.
I am a mother, and they are my kids. They need me.
Just one personal story of many, as international students here in the U.S. face excruciating choices. We actually spoke to Nazanin before the Israel-Iran fight broke out. She says her family is safe now, but she's worried about their ongoing safety as this fight is, in fact, escalating. All right, coming up, why one man is letting a whole bunch of snakes bite him in hopes of a medical breakthrough. Well, we're being forced to talk about snakes, so let's do it. They are silent, they're deadly, they're my biggest fear, and they're the biblical embodiment of evil. So it is no wonder they top the list of things Americans are afraid of. But one Wisconsin man has spent the last 2.5 decades not only collecting some of the most venomous and deadly snakes in the world, but letting them bite him literally hundreds of times, and in the process building up an immunity to their venom. Now, scientists say his blood could be the key to revolutionizing the way that we treat snake bites, something that kills around 100,000 people every year. NBC's Marissa Parra has the story.
For 18 years, Tim Freedy spent much of his spare time like this.
Black mamba.
Taking bites from his pets, some of the deadliest snakes on the planet. So why face something even the bravest action heroes usually fear?
I hate snakes, Doc! The reason behind it is I didn't want to die from snake bite. I didn't want to use antivenom. I didn't want to lose a finger.
Despite lacking a formal scientific education, Freedy developed a system to build up a resistance, starting with small injections of venom and building up to full-on bites.
Very painful.
But there were setbacks.
Well, the first year I started doing this, it was a total disaster. I ended up in the hospital in a coma on 9/12, the day after 9/11, after 2 cobra bites.
Eventually, Freedy had the idea that his blood could be used by scientists to develop a better kind of antivenom and tackle a global problem.
5 million people are bitten every year. 125,000 people have died every year. And there's over 400,000 amputations and disfigurements because of snake venom.
While there are antivenoms available for many of the world's venomous snakes, the traditional process has drawbacks. Small doses of venom are injected into an animal, like a horse, which then produces antibodies turned into an antivenom. Plus, those horse antibodies can cause serious side effects. That means a patient needs to identify the kind of snake that bit them, and then the hospital needs to have that specific antivenom, a challenge in many poor rural areas. Freedy's dream, a universal antivenom based on human antibodies. It seemed more like a fantasy. For nearly 2 decades, he couldn't convince scientists to use his blood, but he persisted. Over 650 injections and over 200 snake bites later, one phone call changed everything.
I was like, look, I would love to get my hands on some of your blood. And then his answer to me was, yeah, I've been expecting this call for a long time.
Immunologist Jacob Glanville founded biotech company Cenovax. The goal? Create a universal vaccine that could treat multiple infectious diseases.
I started wondering whether the same biology might apply to snake bite that applies to universal vaccines.
And the opportunity to study Tim Freedy was once in a lifetime.
Tim seems to be a totally unique immunological history phenomenon.
Glanville says that through repeated venom exposure, Freedy has built incredibly strong antibodies.
So it's like a samurai sword. We were bending it and hammering it and bending it and hammering. Each time it makes the blade more excellent.
Now, a collaboration between Freedy, Cenovax, and scientists at Columbia University have published a new research paper. The team developed what it calls an antivenom cocktail using antibodies isolated from Freedy's blood. In tests on mice, it gave complete protection against 13 out of 19 of the most deadly snake venoms in the world and partial protection against the other 6. A major step forward, but still a long journey ahead with a different blend of antibodies for vipers in the works. Freedy hasn't been bitten in 8 years, but says he's always willing to jump back in the snake pit for science.
I miss it a lot, but we'll see what the future holds.
A citizen scientist just waiting for the right mission to sink his fangs in.
Did you have to end on that last picture of the snake? I'm not kidding you, Marissa. Snakes are literally one of my biggest fears. I mean, they make my skin crawl. I cannot even handle them. Anyways, okay, not about me. Let's talk about that story, because I understand that all those snake bites, they not only took a toll on Tim physically, but they also affected his family life.
Yeah, talk about taking one for the team, Yasmin. And not just one, but like 200 for the team. And this had a really big impact because he was married, he had kids, and his wife was sick and tired of watching him put himself through this. But also, she was, of course, also potentially worried about the impact it would have on herself and the kids. So she moved all of them out. He was left alone. He didn't talk to his son for a long time, his sons, but one of them saw the news, called him up and said, "Dad, I finally understand, and I'm proud of you after all that you've done." So hopefully we'll see this, if all goes well, on the shelves for humans within the next several years, Yasmin.
Wow, Marissa Paraforce, thank you. Appreciate it. That is a wrap for this hour. Coverage picks up right now. We are coming on the air tonight with a dramatic escalation in the fight in the Middle East. Fighter jets are being heard across Iran's capital right now after Iran launched multiple waves of attacks against Israel. What we know about the attacks and why the back and forth could go on for weeks. We have information coming in literally by the minute. Our team is all over it, from Tel Aviv to the White House. Plus, our other big story today, hundreds of planned anti-ICE rallies all over the country this weekend. We're going to take you live to Los Angeles, where crowds are gathering. And Karen Reed's fate now in the hands of a jury for the second time. Will the second one trial end like the first? We're going to bring you updates from the courthouse. But an ex-NFL star wanted for attempted murder. The search is on for wide receiver Antonio Brown. Well, Miami police say he did. And the miraculous sole survivor of the plane crash in India that killed hundreds, what he's saying about the crash for the first time from his hospital bed. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin Vasugian in for Hallie tonight, and you are getting a live look at Tel Aviv after Iran hit Israel with 3 waves of missile attacks. We know at least 20 people were injured, according to Israeli hospitals. That as of right now, we are getting reports of missiles and fighter jets being heard flying over the Iranian capital of Tehran, the latest in this violent back and forth between Iran and Israel. But just hours ago, watch as one missile appears to slip through Israel's air defenses and hit a residential area in Tel Aviv. Unbelievable to see. Also new to us tonight, the U.S. is helping the Israelis shoot down these missiles after President Trump and the Israeli prime minister spoke earlier today. The missile attacks were Iran's promised retaliation for Israel's relentless bombing campaign that started last night. Iran said at the UN earlier today that the U.S. is complicit in Israel's attacks, even if they weren't directly involved, and would feel the consequences. Israeli warplanes have continued to drop bombs all across Iran today, hitting, they say, hundreds of targets, even in the last several hours. You can see here some of the explosions from earlier in targeted assassinations of senior military officials and nuclear scientists, as well as strikes on nuclear facilities. This video provided by the Israelis claims to show Mossad agents striking Iranian weapon systems. Take a look at the aftermath in the capital, showing a building in the usually bustling city just totally burnt out. Iranian media are reporting nearly 80 people were killed and hundreds more hurt in Tehran so far. Elsewhere in the country, video captured the moment Israeli bombs hit Iran's most active nuclear enrichment site. So why now? Israel says Iran was, quote, approaching the point of no return in terms of building nuclear weapons. A long-time red line for the Israelis. The prime minister making it sound like this could just be the beginning of a drawn-out offensive.
This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat.
So these strikes on Iran came after months of President Trump warning Israelis not to do exactly what they did, over fears it could derail talks over the nuclear program. The Iranians earlier canceled negotiations set for Sunday, but the president is still holding out hope, telling NBC News he thinks there's still a, quote, opportunity to strike a deal. And after all of this, you might be wondering, why should I care if I'm here in the U.S. thousands of miles away? Well, if you own stock or you have a car that runs on gas, you should. with oil prices surging and the stock market closing way in the red just in the last couple of hours. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But for now, we want to go back to Tel Aviv. You see the skyline right there. That is where we find our Matt Bradley. Matt, let's just start with what took place over the last couple of hours or so. What have you been seeing and hearing with Iran's retaliation on Israel?
Yeah, Yasmin, what we heard was a warning on all of our phones, and it comes out with a really loud alert. Every Israeli phone gets one telling us to go immediately to the shelters. That's exactly what we did. We went down here, and even inside this barricaded room, we had a front row seat. Really, we could hear outgoing missiles intercepting. We could hear impacts. And then when we opened the door, even inside this building, we could smell dust from what was happening right over this skyline. These interceptions happening, and you saw them on your screen. It was quite a show. Now, we're hearing from the authorities here. 34 people were injured, one of them critically, one of them seriously. Most of them were light injuries, and a lot of Israelis, a lot of folks here tonight who are going to bed without injuries. A lot of these people who are still alive have all of these safe rooms of the kind that we were in to thank, and this radar system, the emergency broadcast system that broadcasts onto our phones and sent out this big siren nationwide.
Matt, Israel and Iran have exchanged fire like this twice before. This time, though, feels and seems very different. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I thought so, too. It sounded as though this was going to be a lot worse, or at least it should have been a lot worse. But what we heard from the IDF was that actually fewer than 100 missiles, ballistic missiles, had been fired by the Iranians here in Israel. That last time we saw that exchange of fire that you're referring to back in October, the Iranians fired more than about 250 projectiles, drones and ballistic missiles. So it was, on some level, quite a lot bigger. And you saw back in October the same kind of look, the same fireworks that were going on. But remember, the Iranians said that they had fired hundreds of ballistic missiles. The IDF counted fewer than 100. The Iranians said that they had fired 3 different volleys of missiles at Israel. The IDF said there were only 2 volleys that came over. So it looks as though there's a big disparity in the numbers. The Iranians might have been winding up a little bit, but we don't know. We're going to have to wait until the light of day.
Disparity to be expected, as we know, with that region and the reporting coming out of that region from both countries. But as we talk about, obviously, the initial attack on Israel, that was much larger, much more damaging than we have ever seen coming out of Israel. Talk me through the support that you're hearing on the ground from Israelis on this military campaign from their leadership.
Well, it sounds as though they're saying that this is going to continue. We heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that this could be days. We're even hearing that it could be weeks. This is not over yet, and probably neither is that Iranian retaliation. They seem to have kept some of their weapons in reserve. They might have more, but it looks as though today was just a taste.
Matt Bradley, thanks so much for that report. I want to bring in Yamiche Alcindor, who's at the White House for us, to talk more about what has been happening over the last 24 hours or so. And I know, Yamiche, that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with President Trump in the last few hours. Any readout from that conversation or what we're hearing from inside the White House?
Well, that's been part of the reason why I'm looking at my phone is because we are waiting and continuing to try to get more details on that call. All we know right now is that U.S. officials are confirming that that call happened. We know also that the U.S. helped Israel as it was defending itself against these missiles that were being launched against it by Iran. We also know that U.S. officials were concerned about the hundreds of thousands of Americans who live in Israel, as well as U.S. military equipment that is in Israel. We also know that President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have a very close and warm relationship, and that continues. That being said, President Trump at one point this week did say that he was hoping that he could get a deal out of Iran to stop its nuclear program. And he said that strikes, unilateral strikes carried out by Israel would not help that. But he also said that at the end of the day, he wasn't going to stop them. And essentially, we also know that the U.S. is saying that they were not involved in Israel attacking Iran. But that being said, the president was very happy and open when he was talking to NBC News today, talking about the fact that the weapons that were used against Iran were American-made, Yasmin.
So I think kind of one of the outstanding questions, Yamiche, here is the reporting on what the U.S. knew and when, and what specifically the president knew and when, because we are getting some mixed signals from the administration and from the White House. And I say this especially because some of the True Social posts that we've been seeing coming from the president, in which he said essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here, that we gave you Iran 60 days and this is day 61, which to me would signify that, in fact, the United States was in lockstep with Israel. But we full well know the reporting coming out of the White House is they were not. He did not, in fact, give the go-ahead to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for this operation.
That's right. Well, the president is saying that the U.S. was not involved in this strike against Iran by Israel, but he's also in some ways trying to take credit for it, saying that Iran was dragging its feet and not moving fast enough in these negotiations, and that, in fact, they at one point might have missed their opportunity, is what he told NBC News earlier today. That being said, the president has said that he does want negotiations with Iran to continue and that he hopes to have a new deal. Of course, he pulled out of the original Iran nuclear deal that was negotiated by President Obama. But I think it's really interesting that the president is taking credit for this while also saying that it wasn't U.S. involvement in terms of military personnel helping Israel in this regard. Is
there any indication, Yamiche, just quickly here, that the president's relationship with Netanyahu may at all be fractured? And I only ask this because if the president felt as if they were in a precarious position when it came to the nuclear negotiations, and yet Netanyahu still went forward with this attack, what would that say about their relationship?
Look, it's a key detail that we're trying to drill down on. Right now, the relationship between President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu still seems warm, still seems not fractured. That being said, I think there are a lot of questions about whether or not President Trump
I want to tell folks what we're seeing on the screen here right now, because if you just take a listen to what we're hearing, this is the sky over Tel Aviv. And this is usually the notification that citizens of Tel Aviv, for instance, would hear if there is an incoming missile attack. Of course, we have talked extensively about the Iron Dome defense system over Israel. Part of this Iron Dome defense system is obviously the indication of, or the notice of, an incoming missile attack. And so with this indication or the notice of an incoming missile attack, the assumption is that possibly another launch on Tel Aviv. Hence, we are hearing from our team on the ground that they have now run for cover. As Matt Bradley was talking about earlier, many citizens of Tel Aviv and other cities throughout Israel have special kind of quote-unquote bomb shelters in which they seek cover, seek safety when these missile attacks are launched on their cities. And you see a projectile, I believe, in the sky right now above the city of Tel Aviv as it makes its way towards. And there is where you see the activation of the Iron Dome. So that is where you see the intercept of a missile approaching the city of Tel Aviv, in which it was then intercepted by the Iron Dome. Yamiche Alcindor, thank you. I want to bring in Keir Simmons now to talk more about this, who's on the ground for us in the Middle East. And so, Keir, you know, we're trying to decipher what we're seeing right now. And you see me you heard me talk through this, but I imagine what we are seeing right now is yet another attack, another launch on Tel Aviv, and we're seeing more projectiles now launching on Tel Aviv, which will likely be intercepted by this Iron Dome. But again, this is more intense, this is more frequent than what we have ever seen before between both Iran and Israel.
Yes, it is, and it's kind of sobering, I guess, to just reflect that the first time we saw an exchange of fire, if you want to call it that, between Iran and Israel, that was unprecedented. Yeah. And now we're seeing it again in this environment after this attack by Israel on Iran. It does take a long time. It depends on the kinds of munitions that are being fired by Iran. It can take time for some of it to reach Israel. Yeah. So is this a new wave? Is this the same wave is an important question. You're right, the Iron Dome is very, very effective. We are seeing video on social media and things from Tel Aviv that does suggest that there have been some of those Iranian munitions have caused some kind of damage. And so we'll wait to see. I mean, you can hear.
Well, and Keir, we just saw actually.
That sounds like it.
We just saw one missile actually break through, I believe, the Iron Dome, because we saw an explosion on the ground there in Tel Aviv. So, I mean, you have to understand
it's hard to tell. It is hard to tell.
It is. Yeah.
It's hard to tell from a distance what you're seeing. It can be shrapnel. It can be part of the defensive system. But clearly, the Iron Dome, good as it is not going to be 100%. That would be frankly impossible. So the Iranians are achieving some limited success. I mean, the question is whether one of the questions is whether they are firing all of their capability or whether the Iranians are holding back in some way, trying to not escalate too much, while at the same time responding in the way that the Iranian leadership has said that it would.
You know, Keir, in the last, I believe, fight between Israel and Iran, Jordan was helping shoot down some of the missiles that were headed towards Israel, in addition to United States defense systems. Do we have any indication that Jordan is doing the same time this round?
There are reports of that, and it is a very anxious thing because the Jordanians obviously are very close to the U.S. They depend on the U.S., frankly, and yet at the same time they are also physically very close to Iran. And so helping to defend Israel risks for Jordan that they then become a target. And there are all kinds of other challenges, as you know very well, in Jordan around these kinds of tense moments. So it is very likely. I mean, just remember where I am in the Gulf. I mean, there are U.S. bases in almost every country here. So, you know, it is very likely that those bases are being used to help defend Israel. But those countries are not going to be wanting to advertise that too openly. I will say this, though. One of the risks, if Iran carried out a very impactful attack on Israel, is that it would actually pull America into all of this, because the Trump administration, any American administration, would feel compelled to act if Iran managed to land some substantial deadly punches on Israel. So in a certain sense, defending Israel from these missiles is de-escalatory.
Keir, stand by for me. Yamiche, if I still have you, I want to throw to you with one question, which is, do we understand any kind of red line that the president has talked about when it comes to involvement in this ongoing fight between Israel and Iran? He has said so far the U.S. is not interested in getting involved. This is their fight. But is there a red line for the United States, considering, of course, that Iranian leadership has already said that the U.S. is, in fact, a target? And we've seen U.S. bases targeted before, especially after the killing of Soleimani.
It's a great question. I don't think that there's an actual red line that's been stated by President Trump or his administration. What we have heard from administration officials today is that part of the reason why they're helping Israel defend itself is because not only because they are a close ally, but also because there are hundreds of thousands of American citizens who live in Israel, as well as a lot of U.S. military equipment. There's also the fact that the president has been very clear that he does not want to get into another war, and he campaigned on the idea that he was going to be pulling America out of the war. He even gave a speech before military cadets saying that this was going to be a new era where there were not going to be American soldiers sent into wars, into nation building activities or any sort of missions like that. That being said, this has sort of set off a real divide between people who are traditional Republicans who want to possibly see some sort of military engagement here, and more sort of MAGA-type people, MAGA-type conservatives who really, really, really want to avoid war and want nothing to do with it. Yasmin.
Yamiche, stand by for us. If you hear anything from the White House amidst all of this, please let us know. We'll get you back on. I want to bring in now senior national security correspondent Courtney Kube, and also NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs to talk about what we've been seeing on our screens in Tel Aviv, with an additional now launch from Iran into Tel Aviv. Court, let's first talk about the U.S. involvement here, right? Because we now understand that the U.S. is helping shoot down some of these ballistic missiles that are headed from Iran over to Israel. How exactly does that work? And the president defining and kind of clarifying that, in fact, it was not necessarily U.S. personnel. It is U.S. equipment that is helping shoot down some of these missiles.
Yeah, so we're talking about ground-based interceptors that the U.S. has been using to help defend Israel from this attack by Iran, this ballistic missile attack. We don't know a whole lot of the details about exactly the scope or scale of the U.S. involvement versus the Israeli air defense systems, but we know that the U.S. has both THAAD and Patriot batteries on the ground in Israel and in the region that they were able to use to help defend Israel. That's only one of sort of the legs of the triad here that the U.S. has to be able to defend the skies and defend Israel. There also is a U.S. military, U.S. Navy presence in the region, that they have ballistic missile capability in the Red Sea, in the Mediterranean. They could help shoot down any kind of projectiles coming towards Israel. And then remember, during one of the more recent salvos, the back and forth between Israel and Iran, the U.S. put up fighter jets into the air that shot down a number of the drones that were launched from Iran towards Israel. But again, Yaz, at this point, we're only aware of the ground-based interceptors used in this recent salvo.
Well, it's interesting, Court, because as you were speaking, I actually heard the sound of some sort of jet flying overhead. But I imagine, obviously, the airspace over Israel right now is shut down. So there's no indication right now that they're using anything beyond Iron Dome capabilities at this point.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. And what this is also sort of unfolding right now is this appears to be waves coming both from Iran and from Israel here. It does still seem that it doesn't seem like Israel has stopped. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, last night saying that this would be days, maybe even a couple of weeks, this campaign would last. And it does appear that Iran has taken more than one wave, maybe as many as the 4 at this point, since Israel began these strikes last night. So again, a defense official saying it's just these ground-based interceptors so far. The other thing we should be watching for, though, is not just the U.S. providing defensive support to Israel, but if, in fact, this keeps going on for days or even weeks and it ratchets up the tension even more, is whether the United States would make the decision to up their support to Israel in other ways. A couple of easy ways is enhanced intelligence sharing. The U.S. and Israel already share a ton of information, a ton of intelligence with one another. They have a very close relationship. But they could also do more logistical support. We've talked about aerial refueling of Israeli jets. They have that capability themselves, but it'd be one more thing that the U.S. could do to support. They could provide support from U.S. Bases where United States personnel, military personnel, are based forward in the region. And then there is always the option that the U.S. would provide a more kinetic support to them, so actually dropping bombs. President Trump is right. The U.S. has supplied a lot of the firepower that Israel has been using, including some of those larger bombs they have. They're often called a MOP, or a massive ordnance penetrator. We tend to call them bunker busters. The U.S. has provided those sorts of things to the Israelis, and they have the ability to carry them on their fighter jets already.
All right, Court, stand by for me as well. If you hear more, let us know. We'll get you back on. Colonel Jack, let's talk through some of this stuff. And I think first and foremost, I think what's important for folks to understand is exactly how this Iron Dome works, because that is exactly what we were seeing was the Iron Dome defense system in action as we saw those missiles coming from Iran. And I don't necessarily know the exact travel time, but from my understanding, from when those missiles leave Iranian territory to when they're entering Israeli airspace, we're looking at a couple of hours, right? How much indication, how much timing does Israeli defense systems actually have when they see those missiles incoming? Because, I mean, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and the answer to that is not much time. Don't forget that the area is extremely small. The distance from Iran to Tel Aviv is actually quite short. There are a couple of ways that the phases during which the missiles can be detected. Ideally, they're detected at launch so they can be intercepted as early as possible. But the Iron Dome also includes the capability to intercept incoming ordnance at mid-range. But what you're seeing on the air is at their terminal range, when they're shortly going to hit. And that's the time that the Iron Dome and its capabilities are really tested. And that's why often if they get through and are in the terminal stage, it's more difficult to get them because there's not much time left. There are quite a few of them, and the Iranians try to overwhelm the capability to be intercepted. And that's why you see some of them get through, Yasmin.
So how do you assess Iran's military capabilities at this very moment, 6:24 in the evening here on the East Coast, considering what we've seen over the last 24 hours, and also couple that with the last 2 back-and-forth attacks between Israel and Iran?
Well, the short answer is denigrated. Don't forget that what Israel's objective, of course, is to eliminate the nuclear capability. But you can bet that the initial attacks on Iran was to eliminate or certainly denigrate its anti-aircraft capability, and also its Iran's capability to launch missiles in retaliation, which is why you probably see far fewer incoming missiles into Israel from Iran than you did the last time Israel and Iran went to war. If you were going to target the nuclear capability, clearly you would go after their enrichment facilities at Natanz. At Qum, if you can possibly get to it, it's inside a mountain, very difficult to get to, and that may be coming up in future days or weeks. But certainly the first thing you would do would be to make it safer for your own aircraft to attack Iran. That means that you would attack Iran's capability to shoot down your own planes, anti-aircraft missiles, and their capability to retaliate. But it's clear at the moment that the retaliation is not nearly from Iran, is not nearly as intense as it was the last time Israel and Iran went to war.
But, you know, it's interesting because it's a question that Keir Simmons was asking earlier, which is this Iran not having the capability to strike in the way they want to or that they can, or is this them holding back?
It may be a bit of both. Don't forget that as monolithic as Iran looks to us, it's probably not monolithic. There are plenty of arguments inside the Iranian government about how to react, when to react, what to launch now, what to save to later, and whether or not there should be an escalation of the conflict to try to punish both Israel on the one hand and its allies on the other. So they probably haven't made a decision yet on how to use their ordnance. Also, their ordnance, their capability to attack Israel is not limitless. You heard Courtney talking about one of our capabilities is to assist not just with further intelligence, but also logistical support for Israel. Well, Iran's not in that position. It has a finite amount of ordnance it can use. It has some friends in the world, but they're not nearly as well armed now as they were last time. And they have to husband their resources if they want to retaliate later. They know that Israel's going to attack again. They know that one of the principal, if not the principal target, is the storage facility near Qum. And they need to retain their ability to both defend against Israeli attack and to counterattack if Israel does attack at Qum. So they're probably husbanding their resources, but they also don't want to escalate to the point where other people will, like the United States, will be dragged into the conflict. Yes.
Colonel Jack, if you would stand by for me, I would appreciate it as we're watching this all take place over in the Middle East. I want to bring in Aaron David Miller, Senior Fellow for the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Aaron, you're exactly the guy I wanted to talk to today as we're watching this all take place there in the Middle East between Iran and Israel. One thing that has stood out to me is how the president has said most recently, and I'll paraphrase, that there might be a possibility that Iran could come back to the negotiating table. At this point, what would be Iran's incentive to negotiate with the United States over the nuclear deal, considering the attack from Israel and what seems like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's ultimate objective is for Iran not to reach a deal?
I mean, I think that's right. And look, it is not a partisan comment. I worked and voted for Republicans and Democrats for decades. I don't know who's advising the president when it comes to analyzing Iran's motivation, but I think the president is identifying a second illusion. The first was that within 60 days, Iran will be willing to reach an agreement on a series of complicated issues by his 60-day deadline. That was illusory. It was never going to happen. And anyone who believes that somehow the Israelis struck in order to avoid a breakthrough in the Iranian negotiations, I think that's not a correct analysis. The Trump administration was nowhere near a breakthrough. The second illusion is that Iran somehow, having been humiliated, embarrassed, penetrated from a security point of view with an operational effectiveness that is stunning, even considering the Israeli operations against Hezbollah and Iran the first time around, that Iran is somehow going to come back to any contact with the Americans on anything other than a performative basis to complain. I think that's the second illusion. Iran has invested $5 trillion in all kinds of costs in the Iran nuclear endeavor. It's a matter of national prestige and honor. And the one downside, Hallie, of this strike is the longer-term possibility that the Iranians, far from giving up their pursuit of a deliverable nuclear device, will, I suspect, if the regime survives, and I think it probably will, commit themselves, just certainly discreetly, to trying to weaponize. So, no, I don't think there's much hope, frankly, for a breakthrough in U.S.-Iranian relations.
So then how do we, Aaron, see this playing out right now, considering what we believe to be Prime Minister Netanyahu's objective? And if Iran certainly doesn't come back to the table, where do we go?
Haley, I would only point out to you the last 18 months. I could ask and answer the question on where is the Israeli-Hamas conflict in Gaza going? We're no closer to an end state in Gaza. This is the Middle East where neither black nor white prevail. It's usually gray. It's usually messy. If I had to make a calculation, it would be this. If Iran doesn't expand their target set and strike oil infrastructure or American bases in Iraq through their proxies, or directly strike U.S. forces in the Gulf, I think that this conflict may well be contained. And it will not end. It will devolve and peter out to a war between the shadows with cyber, black ops, Israelis going after nuclear scientists, Iranians targeting Israelis abroad, and probably Jewish communities. So I think that's where it's going. This is going to devolve into what you could call the war between the wars. The Israelis already have a name for it. That's where I think we're going, assuming we get out of this without a major regional escalation.
Aaron David Miller, thank you as we're continuing to monitor the skies over Tel Aviv and the conflict between Iran and Israel. We'll be right back. Welcome back now to our other big story tonight. Dozens of cities across the country are now getting ready for anti-ICE raid protests happening tomorrow. Law enforcement in L.A. saying it's just the last hour, I should say, any violence will have consequences.
If you come to our city with the intent to commit crimes, damage property, or harm others, including our officers, you will be arrested.
So they're gearing up for these so-called No Kings protests set to happen in all these cities that you see marked on this map, literally across the country. Organizers saying it's meant to counter this major military parade happening in D.C., marking the Army's 250th anniversary. You've also got a big search tonight out of New Jersey for 4 people who escaped an immigration detention center in Newark. The Department of Homeland Security and FBI are offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to their arrest. David Noriega is joining me now from Los Angeles. How have things, David, been looking there today, especially in anticipation of what is to come tomorrow?
Yeah, well, let me show you a little bit. We're right outside the federal building where the National Guard troops have been stationed all week, along with some, tactical units from different federal law enforcement agencies. There's especially a Customs and Border Patrol contingent out here today that I'm seeing for the first time, actually. But the group you see here is a really good example of the kinds of small but persistent, kind of committed, groups of people who've been coming out here every single day for the last week and really kind of keeping up the pressure, keeping up the presence going into the weekend. Now, what we've seen in response to these very small and 100% peaceful protests is a very overwhelming response to those protests by law enforcement, by local law enforcement, state, local, and county law enforcement, who in some cases have been outnumbering protesters, 2 or 3 to 1. This is hugely important. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is hugely important for local law enforcement because they are committed to proving to the federal government that there is no need to have National Guard troops here. There's no need to have Marines here. And what we're going to see this this weekend, I think, is exactly that kind of display of law enforcement to try and make sure that things don't get out of hand. The chief of the LAPD, actually, Jim McDonnell, gave a press conference about this earlier today. Let's listen to a bit of what he said. Take a listen.
This is to me, an unprecedented event where you have military personnel deployed into a city where it hasn't been done in coordination and request by the local authorities.
The local authorities here are really walking a tightrope, Yasmin, because on the one hand, they don't want to show too much of a heavy hand in suppressing these protests that they ostensibly agree with the motive of, right? They disagree with these ICE raids that have been happening around Southern California, but they also want to make sure that things don't become violent, that things don't become chaotic, therefore giving fuel to Donald Trump and his claims about lawlessness and disorder in Los Angeles, Yasmin.
David, we've also been hearing about some protesters showing up at hotels where ICE agents are believed to be staying around Los Angeles. We got this video of protesters actually rallying outside one hotel, and they're calling it the No Sleep for ICE movement. What are you hearing about this?
You know, I'd actually been hearing about those actions all week, and then they kept not materializing. Then eventually they materialized in the last day or two. It's pretty much what you see. People have figured out in one way or another. It's not clear to me that they're actually right where supposedly ICE agents who are in town are staying in hotels in sort of, you know, cities in the larger LA area and posting up outside and making noise during the overnight hours to ostensibly prevent the federal agents inside from sleeping. What I kind of conclude from that is just kind of a reminder of the really big kind of collection of different political actors that sort of come together when movements like this happen spontaneously, right? There's sort of different kinds of political actors with different ideologies take advantage of these opportunities to come out and sort of, you know, do different kinds of things in different kinds of situations. The people that I think are really interesting in this protest movement, though, this kind of incipient and growing protest movement, though, Yasmin, are the people who do not have any other kind of political engagement experience. Maybe haven't. I've talked to several protesters who've never joined protests before. This is the first time they've done so, and it's because they feel they have skin in the game. Most of them actually are children of immigrants, not undocumented people because they're too scared to come out, but they're U.S. citizen children. Last point I'll make on that, Yasmin, before I let you go, it's that category of person, the children of immigrants, is in Los Angeles County, according to one estimate, fully a quarter of the population of LA County. That means millions of people. Yeah, it's millions of people, and that gives you a sense of kind of the possible ceiling for how many people could be coming out tomorrow to protest these, you know, these ICE raids and these kinds of immigration enforcement actions.
Wow,
Yasmin.
that's huge. That's a huge number. David Noriega, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, tonight, the only survivor of that tragic plane crash in India is speaking about the experience from his hospital bed.
For some time, I thought I was going to die. But when I opened my eyes, I realized I was alive and tried to unbuckle myself from the seat and escape from where I could. It was in front of my eyes that the air hostess and others died.
You see that man here literally walking away from the crash. We're going to show you the video of the moment the plane fell out of the sky. We want to warn you, though, it's disturbing. You see it taken off of the runway en route to London, then barely getting up in the air, and then slamming into a residential area right next to the airport, exploding, as you see there, into this huge fireball. We know tonight more than 240 of the passengers and the crew on the flight are presumed dead. 24 people who were on the ground at the time of the crash still in the hospital and getting treated. Tom Costello has been all over this for us. I mean, it's incredible to hear the story of that lone survivor really feeling more like a television show or a movie than honestly reality, that you could survive a crash like that. But in fact, not only did he survive, he walked away, Tom.
Yeah, with just scratches and I think some light burns. Really amazing. His name is Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, and he was traveling with his brother. He doesn't know what happened to his brother. Everybody else on that plane, and presumably including, of course, his brother all died. And then on the ground, as you know, that plane plowed into a dormitory for college medical students, and there are about 30 people who are believed to have died there. We did hear from this man today. He was interviewed by Indian TV there in the hospital. Take a listen to what he says. You're going to hear the voice of translator.
I don't know about the other part of the plane, but where I landed was on the ground. I could see there was space outside the aircraft, so when my door broke, I tried to escape through a little space, and I did.
Let's show you where he was seated, because that's of great interest to people. He was, of course, in a 787 Dreamliner, and he was seated right there, seat 11A, which is right next to the emergency exit. He said the door for the emergency exit was damaged, and yet there was a small opening, and he crawled through and made his way to safety, and nobody else got out.
I know, Tom, that they have recovered the black box, which is going to be able to reveal to us a lot of information and to investigators as to what actually took place. But you got so many folks scratching their heads right now saying, listen, you see this thing struggle even to take off. And then immediately it seems like it's just gliding back towards the ground. And then that huge fireball that we see, right? That
piece of video,
go ahead.
Can I just show, can we re-rack the video? That piece of video is actually fascinating, because that is something that most U.S. airlines don't have. That is the DVR, video recordings from inside the plane. And that is a DVR that records the camera images from inside the plane. And those camera images pointed at the cockpit to see what the pilots are doing, but also at the galley. Again, looking at the video of the guy walking away with that silver box. That's important. Separately, they also have the traditional black box that we know. That's the flight data recorder, and now a combined flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. So with all of that data and this new video recorder I mentioned to you, they're going to have an awful lot of information. And the leading question right now is, were the flaps on the plane not extended enough in order to have a takeoff? That right now is a leading theory.
Yeah, lot of questions, certainly, as investigators go through all of that stuff. Tom Costello, as always, we're appreciative. Thank you, my friend.
You bet.
Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, at least 11 people are now dead after intense flash floods hit San Antonio. You can see our cars upside down and search and rescue teams looking for people in the water. Several people still missing. Number 2, police in the Dominican Republic arresting the nightclub owner whose roof collapsed and killed over 200 people in April. Him and his sister, who helped manage the club, are being investigated for involuntary homicide. The DR's attorney general says the two showed, quote, immense negligence by failing to stop the collapse. Number 3, Boston University responding to Caller Daddy host Alex Cooper's claims that one of their women's soccer coach sexually harassed her for years. They're saying they have a zero-tolerance policy for sexual harassment. Remember, Cooper says she was ignored after reporting the harassment to BU's athletic director and alleges her coach's successor has harassed even more students. Number 4, a federal judge is now blocking President Trump's executive order for new voter ID requirements. He signed the order back in March, which would make voters show proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections and require states to finish counting ballots by Election Day. Judge says Trump's order goes beyond his authority as president. Number 5, 5 fishermen were just forced to abandon ship 50 miles off the coast of North Carolina after a fire broke out on their boat. They were competing in a fishing contest when their boat caught fire and they had to jump into the water. Nearby fishermen saw the smoke and heard them calling for help and safely brought them back to the shore. All right, coming up, one mother's impossible choice to stay as an international student in the U.S. or return to her home country and possibly never come back.
I am a mother, and they are my kids. They need me.
To tonight's Original Now, with in-depth reporting on a topic that we've been watching. While Iran is locked in that fight with Israel we've been telling you about, the travel ban here in the U.S. is keeping some Iranians from seeing their loved ones. I spoke with an international student who was facing an excruciating choice: continue her education here or go back to her children in Iran. With President Trump's travel ban, tens of thousands of international students now in limbo and facing new challenges. Graduate student Nazanin Hashemian from Iran is one of those students.
The travel ban has completely turned our lives upside down.
She's currently pursuing a graduate degree in computer science at San Francisco Bay University. But her journey has been far from easy. She was first accepted to the University of Tampa on a full scholarship until it was all taken away.
I couldn't continue my education there because of my nationality.
In 2023, Governor DeSantis signed a bill banning universities from providing grants to foreign students from 7 different countries, including Iran. So she opted to study in California. But with Iranians now barred from entering the United States,
I have to choose between continue my education or leaving it behind to be with my children. It is a decision no mother should ever have to make.
For months, she's been trying to get her two 14-year-old daughters to move from Iran to the U.S. She says they applied for a visa a number of times, but continued to get rejected.
I never know about this, that they cannot join me. If I know before this, I never come to U.S.
She says her daughters have been struggling emotionally and mentally without her. The State Department did not respond to our request for comment. Out of the 19 countries part of the travel ban, Iran has the most international students, according to Open Doors, a nonprofit sponsored by the U.S. State Department. Nazanin says she hasn't seen her children or husband in 2 years. And now with the new travel ban, she has lost complete hope of them ever coming.
I am studying. Always I am thinking about my kids, about my husband.
Even her professor is asking for her daughters to get visas, sending a letter to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, saying, quote, Ms. Hashemian is a devoted mother who is striving to build a better future for her family. Nazanin was planning to get her Ph.D. at the University of Tulsa next year, and the school is already warning students from countries that are part of the travel ban not to leave the country. Technically, with her current student visa, Nazanin should be able to re-enter the country even during the ban. But she worries she won't be able to come back. For now, Nazanin doesn't know if she'll plan on staying.
I am a mother, and they are my kids. They need me.
Just one personal story of many, as international students here in the U.S. face excruciating choices. We spoke to Nazanin before the Israel-Iran fight broke out, and then we reached back out to her today, and she says her family is safe right now, but she's worried about their ongoing safety as this fight escalates. All right, the fate of a Massachusetts woman accused of murdering her Boston police officer boyfriend now in the hands of a jury for a second time. That's the defendant, Karen Reed, leaving court a little earlier. 12 jurors will now decide whether she did or did not hit John O'Keefe with her SUV and leave him for dead on a frigid January night back in 2022. Prosecutors say she made her decision that night.
She got drunk. She hit him. She left him to die. It's that simple. She leaves him behind. She leaves her taillight behind. She goes home. 53 phone calls that night. 53 phone calls. Not one to 911.
But the defense says there are holes in the government's case.
You're holding reasonable doubt, folks. You're holding a not guilty verdict. There was no collision. All you need to know is that the Commonwealth failed.
Outside court, about 100 people gathered to show their support for Reed, a lot of them carrying signs or wearing pink. Many of them, like the defense in this trial, believe Reed is being framed, which is why this case really exploded online and in the media the first time it went to trial. Reed's first trial ended with a hung jury. Emily Ikeda is following the story for us. There was a lot of evidence, Emily, that prosecutors laid out. And one of the key differences between this trial and the last one is that they were able to use Reed's own words from interviews. Walk us through that.
Yeah, Yasmin. So Karen Reed never took the stand. She never testified throughout the nearly 8 weeks of testimony from dozens of different witnesses. But she has been very vocal outside of court, talking to reporters and the media almost every day throughout the last number of weeks. But also since the first trial that ended in a hung jury, she's conducted a number of interviews describing a number of things, including drinking the night of John O'Keefe's death. She also talked about some of the moments that his body was found. Take a listen here from some of the prosecution, what they were highlighting in their closing arguments today.
She knows exactly where he is. She knows where to find him. She knows where to expect to find him because she knows where she left him. She tells us.
It was a weird shaped lump at that time in those elements. And I was looking to find him on the side of the road. I was expecting I'd find him.
So this is the slip, Yasmin, that the jurors, 7 women, 5 men, will fill out if they reach a verdict. It lists a number of charges, including murder in the second degree, manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor, and also leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death, Yasmin.
So I know this has really been a highly contentious trial, both this one and the last one as well.
Yeah.
And there are plans when this verdict comes out that local police, law enforcement, they're going to block off streets in anticipation of what may be to come.
Yeah, and you can see why when you take a look at, especially earlier in the day, court has since dismissed, but there's a sea of pink. You could feel emotions running high on the ground here. There are a number of supporters for Karen Read. So many people, not just in the Boston region, the New England region, but across the country that has been following this. I asked Karen Read how she was feeling after closing arguments, and she said that she was feeling good. She also added that she is feeling a little bit anxious and eager for this to end, but it felt like that the closing arguments couldn't have gone better, Yasmin.
Emily Kadaforis, thank you for being there. We appreciate you. Coming up, why one man let a whole bunch of snakes bite him in hopes of a medical breakthrough. Let's talk about snakes, shall we? They're silent, they're deadly, they're the biblical embodiment of evil. So it's no wonder they top the list of things Americans and I am afraid of. But one Wisconsin man has spent the last 2.5 decades not only collecting some of the most venomous and deadly snakes in the world, but letting them bite him literally hundreds of times, and in the process building up this immunity to their venom. Now, scientists say his blood could be the key to revolutionizing the way that we treat snake bites, something that kills around 100,000 people every year. NBC's Marissa Parra has this.
For 18 years, Tim Freedy spent much of his spare time like this.
Black Mamba.
Taking bites from his pets, some of the deadliest snakes on the planet. So why face something even the bravest action heroes usually fear?
I hate snakes, Chuck! The reason behind it is I didn't want to die from snake bite. I didn't want to use antivenom. I didn't want to lose a finger.
Despite lacking a formal scientific education, Freedy developed a system to build up a resistance, starting with small injections of venom and building up to full-on bites.
Very painful.
But there were setbacks.
Well, the first year I started doing this, it was a total disaster. I ended up in the hospital in a coma on 9/12, the day after 9/11, after 2 cobra bites.
Eventually, Freedy had the idea that his blood could be used by scientists to develop a better kind of antivenom and tackle a global problem.
5 million people are bitten every year. 125,000 people die every year. And there's over 400,000 amputations and disfigurements because of snake venom.
While there are antivenoms available for many of the world's venomous snakes, the traditional process has drawbacks. Small doses of venom are injected into an animal, like a horse, which then produces antibodies turned into an antivenom. Plus, those horse antibodies can cause serious side effects. That means a patient needs to identify the kind of snake that bit them, and then the hospital needs to have that specific antivenom, a challenge in many poor rural areas. Freedy's dream, a universal antivenom based on human antibodies. It seemed more like a fantasy. For nearly 2 decades, he couldn't convince scientists to use his blood, but he persisted. Over 650 injections and over 200 snake bites later, one phone call changed everything.
I was like, look, I would love to get my hands on some of your blood. And then his answer to me was, yeah, I've been expecting this call for a long time.
Immunologist Jacob Glanville founded biotech company Senovax. The goal? Create a universal vaccine that could treat multiple infectious diseases.
I started wondering whether the same biology might apply to snakebite that applies to universal vaccines.
And the opportunity to study Tim Freedy was once in a lifetime.
Tim seems to be a totally unique immunological history phenomenon.
Glanville says that through repeated venom exposure, Freedy has built incredibly strong antibodies.
So it's like a samurai sword. You're bending it and hammering it and bending it and hammering. Each time it makes the blade more excellent.
Now, a collaboration between Freedy, Senovax, and scientists at Columbia University have published a new research paper. The team developed what it calls an antivenom cocktail using antibodies isolated from Freedy's blood. In tests on mice, it gave complete protection against 13 out of 19 of the most deadly snake venoms in the world and partial protection against the other 6. A major step forward, but still a long journey ahead with a different blend of antibodies for vipers in the works. Freedy hasn't been bitten in 8 years, but says he's always willing to jump back in the snake pit for science.
I miss it a lot, but we'll see what the future holds.
A citizen scientist just waiting for the right mission to sink his fangs in.
There's literally not a job in the world that I want less than being the individual who gets bit by a snake over and over again. But thank you to Marissa Parra for that incredibly interesting story, and good luck to Tim. That is a wrap for this hour, everybody. More coverage picking up right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.